Good morning. All right. So, back to the calorie tracking app, Daily Jewel, which I don't think I actually mentioned that in any of the previous streams, but it's been in the title, in the path, in various places. Um, yeah. So where we left off last time was what all these streams have really been about so far, which is doing this rewrite to use Redux, but specifically, last time we'd been working on. Let's see, the last thing that was done was implementing this thunk to allow us to request a refresh of the diary, um, and then the question was, okay, well, the main thing that we wanted to accomplish with this, because we don't have like a refresh button or anything in the UI, but we have these two operations, these two uh, actions in the app to either move something that we ate, aka consumption, from one meal within the diary to another one, or to just delete it outright. And we need a way to affect um, basically updating the UI to show that we have, in fact, um, done that. Once that happens, let me pull up the app. I'm not logged in. One sec. Oh, right. I went to localhost and then it had to redirect me back to the private IP, right? Okay. So right now I think adding foods is broken, but maybe if I can find a day. Let's see. 317 should have a bunch of things. Yep, a couple of things. So we can like move our quick add entry here of 123 calories to say dinner. And that has actually happened. We just don't see that reflected in the UI as happening. Um, and I think the original thought was to effectively mirror what the old implementation was doing, where after we've used our tRPC procedure on the back end to move the consumption, then trigger something that would then refresh, like pull the diary information for that day back from the back end, from the database back into the front end, and then update our slice, which is our portion of the Redux store for the diary, with that information. But and where we had what I had realized after thinking about all that towards the end of last stream was that, well, wait a second. Making that extra round trip to the back end and back isn't going to tell us anything we don't already know. Assuming this operation is successful, or this one, we already know everything in the front end about what's changed. Especially in this context where this is the user's own diary, so it's not like there's likely to be something else that's going on behind the scenes, moving stuff around. So it should be pretty safe if we wanted to instead um, in these little add cases where we're handling, okay, well, the promise was fulfilled. So in other words, we successfully moved the consumption, moved the entry, or we successfully deleted it. We should just be able to manipulate the state here to be able to reflect that, and then we don't need to make a round trip to tell us the thing we already know. And so that's where I think we're caught up, basically, with where we had left off. So I think that is kind of the next thing to do. And then after this, we'll have to just hunt down the next place for conversion to using Redux. I think have to go back to the components and look around. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But let's look at move consumption. So for move consumption, we have this action information. So we know from the action here which meal ID we are moving the consumption to and which one it is. We should have something inside of state. Yeah, we have meals. GitHub Copilot is trying to suggest a course of action here that it is not what we want, because there is no action.payload.meals. But what do we want to do? I think we need to do something where we'd say what does meals look like? It's an array of meal with entries. Meal with entries array. So that means let's do this. So I think there's two things we have to figure out, right? So because thank you, Copilot. There's two things that have to be manipulated, right? So if we're moving in consumption, there's the meal that we're moving it from, and there's the meal that we're moving it to. The meal that we're moving it from, we need to identify so that we can remove the moved entry from it. And then there's the meal that we're moving the entry to, and we need to add it. So how do we accomplish that? One of the things I don't want to do, because the number of meals here is user defined, right? So there could be any number of meals in this meals array. So we wouldn't want to say, in another world, we could do breakfast, lunch, dinner equals state.meals, and then figure out which one. We wouldn't want to do that anyway. That's kind of it's going to have a lot of different cases. But what we can do is we could probably just find like a source meal index as state.meals.find index. Let's see how this does. That is almost right, except that's not the right. It's just meal ID. Yeah. Actually, no, that's not right at all, because so this will be right for the target meal index, right? Because the arg here of meal ID will be the meal that we are moving the entry to. But to find the meal that contains that currently contains our consumption, we need to search by consumption ID. And to do that, we have to say something like meal dot entries dot sum. There we go. Right. So we're gonna find the index of a meal in our meals array where its entry, where some, at least one entry, and there wouldn't be more than one with the same ID, matches the consumption ID that we're looking for. So this tells us essentially where we are going to be taking the consumption from and where we're going to put it. And then I think this gets this ends up being pretty simple because we can just do state dot meal sub source. Yeah, exactly, Copilot. So let's add a comment. Entry is not removed from this. Okay, interesting. Comment that Copilot has provided us. Is this true? It's not working. Entry is not removed. It should be though. Entry. Okay. Remove. Yeah. That's not correct. And in fact, yeah, exactly. Something went wrong. Interesting. Am I happy with this? I don't know. Let's see what else. I don't. There's probably a way for this to happen. But I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. Nope. Nope, I'm not going to leave it with a return. There we go. At least this way, if this does happen, I will know about it. Okay, so now we are adding the entry that we grabbed to our target meal. And then the way this works with these writable draft states is that then Redux will, and the code behind create slice essentially will then update the state based on these updates without us having to write, in the past with just Redux by itself, you do things like state equals state, and various things to make copies. But we don't have to do that here. Okay, so this is the kind of the harder case where we need to move the consumption. You can see here the front end is refreshed. So let's move this 123 calorie one back to breakfast. Let me refresh first. Maybe actually have DevTools open and refresh. And then we'll move this 123 calorie back to breakfast. And there it is. It works. What if I'm just thinking, I don't think the entries themselves have the meal ID, so I don't think it'll be a problem. I don't think it'll be a problem that now this is moved. Like if we move this back to dinner, yeah, okay. So we can move it back and forth, doesn't cause a problem. And if we refresh, we should see everything still lines up. Great. And now we need to do something similar but much easier for delete. Where we need to here we don't need to worry so much about the indexes. Did we actually You know, I think I've changed my mind on this. I think we could just use find here. And then this. And this. Like so. Okay. That should basically do the same thing, just with a couple of fewer steps. Move that to dinner, that works. And move it to lunch, and then move it to breakfast, and then move it back to dinner, and refresh. The result we get when we make the round trip to the back end and back ends up with these being in a different order, but I don't know that that's a problem necessarily. There's nothing here in the UI that lets you like reorder things. The order is not all that important within a meal. At least I don't think so. Maybe I'll change my mind about that later. Okay, so anyway, so back to the delete case. So for the delete case, what we want to do is we want to find the meal that contains, I don't know, meal.id equals, yeah, that. Do we have, ooh, we only have the consumption ID. Okay, so we'll do it the other way, where we find the meal that has the entry. And then we just need to remove the entry from the meal, which we can copy and paste to do. And we need our check there to make Typescript happy, because of course we could somehow not find the meal in the meals array. And then let's delete our 1 calorie quick add from dinner. Let me refresh first. Delete, and it's gone. And if I refresh, still gone. Excellent. Well, that was not too bad. Maybe at some point we'll find a use for refresh diary. Okay, so where to next? on our journey of reduxifying everything. Oh, Diary Meal Stories is not happy. Use setting does not exist on type. Oh, right. A bunch of this changed, right? So this is using this diary meal. Oh, we can get rid of this import as well. All right, diary meal is this component. So this is the one that actually gives us the table with all the meal information. Oh, we have a to-do. That's close others. There we go. I will toggle screencast mode. Remember to do that a little bit earlier this time than last. I guess it must not persist. I don't think I turned it off since last time on this computer, so maybe it doesn't persist through restarts or something. All right, so the to-do that we have here is leave this here for now. Once we convert the rest of the components below this to use Redux, then come back and update the add food dialog to use Redux and then address. Okay, so this component, so this is the wrapper around this diary meal component, which again is the table. And so here we are providing some handlers that then in turn should be dispatching our actions. And we did one. We implemented that dialog slice to be able to have different types of dialogues and different parameters into them using keep on wanting to say disjoint. I don't know. I don't have the word right now, but the thing where you can have different, you have a union of disjoint types. Anyway, so we have this one, and I guess the next step is to then implement this for meal add food. So let's search that really quick. So we did add the dialog type here, although the parameters that we need aren't here yet. And then we also have over in this meal add food.tsx, this is where the dialog actually is, and it's still using the old use dialog state and use store from our custom store. And this, I think, is going to get a bit interesting. So we have this component. I recall one of the first steps that we did when we converted the other dialog component was to kind of separate out like any of these action calls, anything that interfaced with Redux, essentially pull that out into kind of a wrapper component, like a connected component. So may do that again. There is you can see we're also using xstate here. Do we have stories for this component? No. Okay, we might also want to look at adding that just so that we can interact with this. I mean, alternatively, you know, we can go back to here and hook this back up, right? So this is when we click add to, this is what's responsible. Like clicking this should launch the modal dialog to do the food search stuff. So let's maybe start there. Yep. And we think we will need the meal ID and the date. And I guess we'll pass it as a string. Like in the old version, we were converting it into a date.js object and passing it in. I don't know if that's worthwhile to do at the moment, so let's not. I'm surprised this is... Why is this complaining and this is not? Maybe it's only giving us one error for both. Huh, okay, well, regardless. Meal ID is a number and date is a string. Is there a reason we can't do that though? Oh, I guess we remove that import. Okay, whatever. I'll just leave it like that. That's fine. And that. And we don't really need to do anything else here. This is pretty kind of generic in terms of, you know, we just save the payload, whatever it is, as the details. So then in our dialog, all of this has to change. It might be helpful, though, to look at, was it meal edit that we changed last time? This is at least not the one that I was thinking of. Did we change multiple dialogues? Because this one obviously is not split into a connected component and not. Maybe I'm just misremembering. Regardless, let's drag that over there and we can kind of have this as a reference. And seeing some commonalities in these styles and makes me want to have these shared somewhere. But that's not the kind of refactoring we're doing right now. All right, so no, this is not the modal I'm looking for. Is it this one? Oh, hey. Looks like we... well, we did this. And yeah, I guess this is what we were working on last time. That then led us to implementing those thunks. Yes. All right, well, that's done now. Yeah. So what we're gonna do is gonna take all of this, and okay, we're gonna call this connected, and then we're going to, that'll be the default export, and then we'll have a function, we'll add food dialog, which will return all of that. Like so. All right, so presumably we had exported this for access in like a story or something. I'm not going to worry about that right at the moment. So what information do we need here? I think this input ref needs to live inside of the non-connected component. The inner component, if you will. I guess I should kind of walk through what this component is and does. I don't know that we've seen it on stream. It's been broken for a little while now. But basically this dialog, the purpose is that, you can search for food items. And you can either search by entering in some words, and that hits the back end, which then in turn can hit the Open Food Database API and do a food search, and then pull that data into the Daily Joule database. Or you can switch to a barcode scanner that will use your whatever camera you have connected. It's available to your browser to scan a barcode, and we use, I forget the name of the library. Starts with a Q. Quagga, yeah. To actually do the barcode processing, and then again that barcode, those digits go to the backend via tRPC, and then the backend can hit the Open Food database, Open Food Facts. That's what it's called. To look that information up and then pull it into our database, and so that is all stuff that's happening here, right? So there's food search. The food search component is responsible for like that input, and then we have various like, oh, we haven't found a food to add, and we did find results. So here's the results. Here's the count of them. If this is a quick search, so we're just searching like foods you've added before, or just like without hitting the Open Food Facts database. Here's quick results. So like as you type, it will return results. Or you can hit the search button and then you get the full results, which is what search results here means. And then we have a search results list component, which then is responsible for displaying the results. And then if you have selected a food to add, we have this consumption component, which allows you to kind of get a preview of what the item is and be able to select serving information, and then eventually say, okay, I want to add this to one of my meals for the current date, or the date that we're the date of the diary we're looking at. And of course, you can close the dialog whenever you're done. So that's what's going on in all of this. So some logic here, some kind of like which view we're on, but a lot of the stuff is hidden inside of these other components. And right, so one thing I think we want to mirror is having a on close, like so. And so we're going to replace dialog.close here with on close. And here. And then we also want an is open. And that will replace this dialog that is open. And that's kind of the essence of this transformation, you know, kind of extracting out this inner non-connected component is essentially saying what are the data elements and what are the callbacks that provide the interface to this component, separate from how do we then get that information and those callbacks tied into Redux, which is what's going to happen in the connected component. So I can see here we need, you know, meal. And this basically gives us information about the, so going back to the UI, the way to get to that dialog is to click to add to breakfast or lunch. So when we launch the dialog, we know which meal we want to show information about. That's why in the action, wherever that is, you know, we're passing in this meal ID. So one of the parameters to the dialog is the target meal ID. And so one of the things that we will need to do here is look up that meal. You can see that here where we, in the old style, we're getting options, we're getting the meal ID, and then so this is the meal without the entry, so just like from the user settings. So just like what's the label for the meal is essentially the only information we really need here. And we do need the target meal ID to then feed back into various things. So like we need to pass it to the consumption for some reason. Okay, so we are fetching that meal information again here. Yep. Okay. So we do need the meal ID. And we do want the meal label. And so instead of... So I could... Two things come to mind. You know, we could just pass in the meal object, or we could pass in the meal ID and the meal label separately. We are going to need to get the meal from the user settings, although we'll be able to get that. We won't have to make separate requests for that. We have the user settings available, so we can select that from the store. So let's say we have a meal. It is just a meal. Is that the right type? Yes. Now looking at this especially, I feel like maybe it's maybe easiest to have a separate component that is kind of a loading version of this. And so we can say that the meal will always, like, we don't have to worry about like, oh, well, maybe it's undefined or null or something or other. And in fact, we can just get rid of this and we could say, we'll just use the label. I think that'll be cleaner, to let me make this a little bit more concrete. So we can pass in the meal here, but this is going to complain, I think, because meal is null or undefined potentially, and so this is going to say, oh well, it can't be null or undefined. It's a meal, and so if what you could do, and there are examples of this in this code base, is say, oh well, it's optional, or it's meal or undefined, or what have you, and have kind of logic embedded inside of the component that does that. What I'm thinking to do here, though, is to essentially, if we are loading, like if the data is not all available, we can have a separate loading component that we can return instead. And so this component, this inner component, will not be rendered if meal is not there. I'll just leave that like that. That's fine. But main thing I want to focus on is just kind of like getting this inner component done. So I think there's another place where we're using meal ID. This can be meal.id instead. And same thing here. Okay. There's more though. So we have a onClick to essentially say, okay, we want to do the search. To show all results, right? So this is if we are in this quick search view, we want to be able to show all results. So we want a handler on that. So we can just call it on show all results. And this will be the thing we call right here. We had this on add, which we had presumably, well, it looked like there it is, set food to add. So we're using xstate keep track internally of the food we were going to add, that we're considering adding, right? So that we could provide that to the consumption component. I think a question is, do we want to put that in the store, or would we want to consider continuing to use xstate? Regardless of that, we still need to, that's still going to be passed in as a prop to our inner component. So we'll have food to add. Which is either a food or it's null. And this is not about loading, but because this represents something that the user will either has yet chosen or has not yet chosen. another thing that's distinct from kind of our loading, the question of how we're handling loading in our connected component is when we're fetching search results. So what is the behavior here? Because we have this food search results thing that's coming from our use observable. So this is essentially, this would be giving us information about the results of the search, and including like a status, whether it was successful or if it was loading. Although we are not currently showing anything when the presumably one would hope that the food search component is showing that information about, oh, I'm currently searching, waiting for results back, that sort of thing, because we're definitely not doing that here, right? We're only interested in here's the actual results that we've gotten and showing them. And this is kind of interesting because the actual activity of getting food search results, like the thing that is causing that to be there, I think must be happening inside of food search. I guess we could just go look. It's only a key press away. Yeah, there's a lot hidden going on here. That we will reduxify later. But then that information then appears again above the component that contains that's using it in this dialog, right? So we're getting the food search results here to be able to then pass into a sibling component of the food search, which is all of this, right? So we're using that here to get the number of results, and here we're passing it to search results list. That's it, right? Okay. Oh, I defined it, but I did not add it to the props. There we go. So I think, so here, skipping around a little bit, I know, but going back to this food to add and then the handler related to it, this is, we're using set food to add because in the original implementation, this is just using xstate, and so instead of having one handler here, I think it will make sense to have two. So we'll have on select food, I think makes sense. It's interesting that this is called on add. What does this look like internally? On add is being passed into results list item. Right, that makes sense. Right, so the label that we're providing and the iconography that we're using within search results list is add this item. I guess that's okay. It's a little indirect, right? We're indicating to the user you're gonna add this thing, but oh wait, now here review this information before it actually happens. And then presumably there's some kind of add button inside of this consumption component. And on clear selected food, I think makes it much clearer what's going on there. do these separate things belong here? I think maybe not. What does select input do? Where is that coming from? Oh, it's this function here. So this is doing stuff with the focus and select of our input. That feels like something that belongs here. Maybe not necessarily here, but like within the component. Whereas I think the detail on like clearing the selected food is something that maybe our action can do. Like that feels like something that, you know, if add food to meal is a thunk, that maybe when that is the thunk's promise is fulfilled, that maybe we would clear the selected food to move on. So let's say, okay, where's input ref coming from? Okay, it's internal to this component, right? I'm laughing because, you know, we just moved this into this component not too long ago, and I've already forgotten. So on add food to meal, has all this stuff in it. There's going to be at least 4 options, so maybe an object is better. Meal ID, date, food ID, except not options, that date. I'll just be date. And then that becomes redundant. And then serving size and servings we're getting from the component. We weren't doing anything with it before, hence the to-do. But now we can just remove that. And we want to pass in date as well to here. Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm going back and forth on whether we should just pass around everything as day.js objects versus strings. So I'll leave this here as a point of conflict between what we did in the other place and here, and we'll see how that shakes out. Okay. So other things we want to accomplish here. So we have on select food. We did not add that. I want to add on food to meal. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Is it? Nope. Okay. I mean, we could have this except null, but I think it'll be cleaner to have separate Well, this is wrong. Okay. All right. Details. Right, it needs a name. That always trips me up. That the type signature for a function, you have to give it the name of the parameter. So almost there in terms of converting this. So we have food search results data, and we have search results status. And we are wanting to show this information if we've not selected a food to add. But that's not sufficient. Like when we first hit this dialog, we've not selected a food to add, but we don't have any search results either. But we're not showing like loading or anything, so maybe this is a case where the food search result should be passed in. It should either be null or it can be a list of things, and that will be the data. Okay, we don't know the type of that because this. Yeah, great. Do we know the type that this wants? Yeah, I don't know if we can. Where's that coming from? Okay, it's just a food array. It's just a food array. All right. So we can do something like search results. It's not that. Let's see, what is it? Oh. It is control right. And this can be either a food array or null. There we go. So if search results is not equal to null, then we can do these things. Okay, now that just leaves us with view. And this will be interesting when we get to it, because these things are coming from a xstate state machine that dictates the behavior of this food search mechanism. Which I don't know if we'll keep. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But for now, how do I want to do this? All right, so this doesn't know what view is, but up here, we can see it's quick search results or search results or null is the type of that. What is this effectively representing in the context of this component? It's not like... what's interesting. So I don't think it would actually ever be null. Like, so we're saying here the type of view could be null, which I guess is true. But in the context of here, where search results is not null, so we have search results. It should be the case that either this is a quick search result or it's just a normal one. So maybe this should be something like what is going to be more meaningful? I think, you know, we can see here there's more stuff going on if this is a quick result. So maybe that should be the main case. The thing where the case where you know, we're going to have a prop come in. It's going to indicate this situation, and if it's a true situation, that should be kind of the maybe the more interesting case that feels right. So we can do something like is quick search, and we can, you know, so that we don't have to like have I mean, I guess you could, you know, well, I guess you'd, pursuing what I was just thinking of, you know, you can make a separate component and do all sorts of things. I think a ternary will be fine. So we'll do this like this. And then we just grab this part as our other case. Put that right there. Okay, is quick search. It's just a Boolean. It's either going to be true or false. And I need to actually have it. All right, and so that satisfies TypeScript, at least when it comes to our inner component that is actually rendering out the information. Then the rest of the OWL. Actually using this component and hooking it up and figuring out what are the things we need for this. So some of the information that we're getting is going to be coming from our details, from the select dialog details selector, and other information we're going to have to get from other pieces of other selectors from Redux, from the store. And yeah, and other things we just, you know, are not going to have quite yet, and we'll have to just wire those things up, create thunks and all that stuff. So yeah, so if we say so we have this meal info. What are we doing with this anyway? What do we have these two use states and previous meal and set meal and all of this? Not really sure. Let's go back in time slightly. So meal add food. Meal add food. There we go. And so at one point we were using set meal. Nope. What on earth was this supposed to do? Okay. I mean, I think the intent there was just so that we would be getting the meal info from effectively the backend, from user settings. And if something were to cause that to refresh, and then the component re-rendered, then the state could be updated with that updated information. But why did we need to, why did it need to be in state at all? Like, why couldn't we have just read meal info? Thinking back, I think the idea was that if somehow, it doesn't make much sense, but if somehow like this, right, if the status had changed, right, because we would be loading again, and right. So I think the intent was that, if this component was loaded and then something triggered the user settings to refresh again, the status of this result would temporarily not be success, and so this would be null. And this is to ensure that we have the meal, even if like we're going through a refresh until the request succeeds again. So really mixing kind of like loading details and all that into our component right here. Is yet another reason I'm not too upset about like throwing a lot of this away and using Redux instead. Which is not to say that the thing that I had built with RxJS couldn't have been made to work and done other things. It just seems like, despite the fact that I've spent several live streams working on this, and it's probably going to be a few more to complete the conversion, I think for benefits we talked about before around having offline support and just easier to maintain, I think what will be easier to understand code as well. This is an effort that's worth it to do this conversion. That being said, we have to actually do it. Right, so what we're effectively trying to do here is we're trying to find in the user settings the meal whose ID was provided to us from our options. Of course, this is different now. Let me go back to kind of a split screen view. Hide the sidebar there. So we're going to want a few things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start adding things to the top here that we're going to need. Yep. So we're going to need to import some things. These same things, actually. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to get rid of all of this. Just kind of do clean slate here. And yeah, that is kind of what I need, Copilot. You did it. Of course, this has the same problem that we had over here, where we know that we are a meal add food dialog, and so well, I guess it's kind of interesting. So Did we? Yeah, because we use it as open. So technically, like, the stuff inside of here, like the stuff, I think this won't be rendered if this is false. But anything that we're doing in here, like finding the meal, this can be executed even when the dialog's not open. So I guess it's in a way kind of legitimate to say, oh, you know, this could be null. It's true. We can also just do that. Meal ID doesn't exist. Right. So I think we do want to do something like this. I think to be meal add food. Let's go back to our dialog. All right. Do we want this type to be a string or a day.js object? What's the difference? I'm not convinced there is one yet. I think maybe we could see that later down the line in terms of having to convert things back and forth a bunch. I'm going to stick with a string for now. I can regret that later. Did I have a day.js? Okay, that becomes a string. This will also be a string. Okay. If not meal, so this is interesting, right? So if so there's kind of two possibilities here. If we don't find the meal, it's because we are loading, or because actually the dialog type isn't meal add food, and so we don't have a meal ID. It's kind of unsatisfying because some of that logic is like what's powering is open, because select is open is looking at well, it's just checking to see if details is null. It's not something specific to the dialog type. So maybe not. And in fact, in that case, maybe we want to just say if yeah, not that. Dialog type not equal to this. Just return null. Of course, that needs to be a string. And then we know that this is not null. Meal can still be undefined. But that would only be if, say, our meals information, which is coming from user settings. So if user settings hadn't finished loading yet, or something has gone very wrong. Okay. So at least it's not complaining about meal being, null or undefined or any of that stuff. So let's expand on this. What else do we need to provide? We need to provide as open, but that's easy enough. we need to provide on close, apparently. And we can do that easily because we have a close dialog action we can dispatch. Date, which is going to be that. That is not correct. So we have a lot of other things. Food to add can be null. Is quick search can be false right now. We'll have to hook all these things up to the store, but of course we don't have anything in the store to do anything with, so we'll just add kind of these placeholders, which Copilot is kind enough to kind of sketch out for us. I think the next thing I want to do is actually take these things and move them to be consts here, so they're a little bit easier to see and kind of populate as we go. Yeah, I like this. This is probably the right thing to do, so much that I'm going to do this here, and that's going to sort out this question of like how to type this better, because it knows the type, because it is a that kind of union whose name I can't remember right now. A discriminated, whatever the tense is, a discriminatory union. Yes. Something like that. So I'm gonna say const foods add null, const is quick search false, const search results, const yeah. Let's see, is that all of the kind of data parts? Yes, const handle show all results, handle select food, handle add food to meal, and handle clear selected food, right? And so then we can just, we'll pass these in. It's the same thing, but at least this way I'll have these kind of separate, so that I could use selector to pull the data elements, and I can implement these here, and it's just it's how I want it to end up being, so it gets us closer to that. All right, so maybe at this point we can actually open the dialog. Looks a little frozen at the moment. Let me... Okay. Quick, not quick add to breakfast. Ooh, we got a dialogue again. And some errors. Something about blur height. I think that's from, something internal, not our code. And blur width, same thing. So, yeah, no problems with our code. Of course, this does something. Oh, look at that. Okay, so it is, that part is still connected. Internally, that's that food search component that the component that we've been working on uses. If I type ginger, let's see, what is a... Oh, right. So we're getting the results. So all that's happening behind the scenes, but our component is not hooked up to actually get that information. Right, so we have search results here, but we're not actually pulling that information. And the issue, one of the issues now is that the component under the hood, the food search component, doesn't even use Redux. So there's no way for it to pass that information to us. And so now we descend I layer into the onion, whatever the metaphor is, to reach into this component and reduxify it, and get it going, and then that takes us to the part where we're going to start seeing what we were doing with xstate as well pretty soon. Right, so that's where like these view values are coming from, scanning and text search. So we have these different observables that we are getting information from. And then in food search itself, this is backwards compared with how the components that we've been working on are laid out, where we have the connected component at the top, and then the inner one below. This one just is laid out differently, kind of in reverse. But you can see like here's how we're getting input ref passed in from meal add food, and then depending on which view we're showing, we're displaying different things. So like here is if we got some kind of error from the barcode scanner, this is like information about that, like what you can do and retry and that sort of stuff. And then if we did scan a barcode of some kind, then showing what the code was, being able to select and scan a different code, or cancel search, and then the actual barcode scanner component, and then text field for text search. So all that stuff we're showing here. And then we have these, here's on search text change. So when you're entering text, that callback is getting run. That then is all this stuff hooks up to these actions, all these actions.fs for food scanner, then tie into xstate to tell the state machine what's happening. So a thing to figure out and maybe require some reading is, assuming we don't want to just like ditch xstate, which maybe long term we do, but at this point I don't know if I want to bite that off right now, versus figuring out how to integrate it with Redux. I feel like integrating it with Redux will be easier to do. Maybe. I feel like there was like something in the docs about that, either in the Redux docs or in the xstate docs. I mean, there's definitely overlap in what those libraries do between Redux and xstate. So why have both? Well, there's some reasons. In the short term, I don't know if I want to take on replacing that logic right now. And it's not that complex, but it's not trivial either. I guess I could actually pull it up. One of the nice things about xstate, though, because it is how there is overlap, is because xstate, being a state machine library, is kind of maintaining state information for us in the same way that we're using the store and Redux do. But there's expectation of using it to then, given the state you're at, what are the possible states you can get to, and that kind of modeling of process and change in state that is possible to model in Redux, but there's some functionality that makes that easier, makes it easier to understand during and after the fact how that's supposed to work. Now I just got to remember where I stuck. It's in store in xstate. So we have food search input, and so we can see here if we click Open Visual Editor. Can I zoom out? There we go. And let me make this bigger. There we go. And then maybe I can zoom back in so that's legible again. How do I? Oh yeah, middle click drag. So you can see here there's these like there's the food search input, is kind of the overall like state machine, and there's these two modes that we're operating in. One is a text search mode, and the other is a barcode search mode. And so this really helps me when I was kind of figuring out how this was supposed to work, to keep straight kind of switching between these modes, and especially once I introduced this concept of quick search, where you can quickly enter text without hitting like a search button or hitting enter, and it will, um, do a very quick search. In other words, not hitting the Open Food Facts DB and doing a more thorough search, but just finding things that you found before, essentially, and showing them to you so you can select them again. And okay, well, so basically walking through this, and in fact, there's a nice simulate feature here that allows us to kind of walk through the state machine to see how this behaves. So you can see, we start here. Because text search is kind of the starting mode for this UI element. And we start here and we say if we have text. So initially this won't be true. So we go else. And then essentially you can, at this point, the only thing you can really do is enter text, or you can click the barcodes button. Right? So the user interacting with this, those are kind of the options, besides just like closing the app or canceling the modal or those things that aren't modeled here. But within the just the constraints of being on this dialog, right? You have a search field, and we have a search button, but the search button doesn't really do anything right now. I mean, if you click that, there's nothing in the search box. There's nothing to search. But there's also the barcode scanner activation thing, which I'm not going to click here because I suspect this. Well, I'll try it. Yeah, I don't have a webcam connected to this computer at the moment. So, but basically, at this point, so the user can enter text, or they can click the barcode scanner button. If they click the button, that takes us over to this other mode, the barcode search mode, in which, now we're kind of in a scanning mode. And either that component will either find a code because the user, has a camera and points the camera at a barcode and it eventually scans, or there'll be an error. One of those two things will happen, or the user will click the button to go back to the text search mode. So if the code's found, then we'll show the code, and the user can either get back to the text search, or they can choose to scan a new code, and we can repeat here. And then there's an error, then we can also retry. This also doesn't, again, this is just modeling that search capability. So we don't have like states for, okay, well, now we're going to show the results. That's something that the other components, like when we were looking at the dialog component, it was looking to see if we have results and then showing them. We don't need a state to model that, because that's not the problem of this component. This component is just trying to figure out what are the available options, and really what are the allowed options, what makes sense for this UI component. So we can go back, and if we go back to text search, then we can say, do we have text or not? So this is a bit of state that we are keeping in this state machine. This text, whatever the text the user enters. So let's say still they haven't entered anything because they went directly to the barcode scanner, and they were like, okay, well, oh, never mind, I don't have a barcode. And so let's say they enter some text, and so we have some stuff here, some logic that saves the text they enter when they enter it. And that brings us to the part where what can happen. So they can enter more text. So we're in this populated text field state now. So in other words, the user has entered some text. So we have some text to do the search. And one of the things that will happen is after 500 milliseconds, this is actually like logic that xstate handles for us, that after 500 milliseconds, if we're in the state where we have not left the state through one of these other actions, we will search food by name quick. And so that brings us into a quick search result state. So this is what's responsible for telling the UI, let's do that quick search. And then we'll be in that state where, okay, now when we have results, it's results from a quick search. And then the user can enter more text, or they can click the search button. So if they enter more text, that brings us back to that state we were just in. And you can see there's also a click search button action here. So there's two of them. There's one over here and one over here. There's one here as well, so which we'll get to in a second. So let's say, okay, well, I typed some text. I thought about it for a second, and within that second, the quick search happened. But then I typed some more things, and then before the 500 milliseconds, I clicked the search button. So now we're in this populated text field no quick search state. So we have the text field, and we have clicked the search button, and again, this state machine doesn't need to model like, are there search results or not, or kind of the network traffic, any of that stuff. That's not its responsibility. It's just trying to say, okay, well, what makes sense for the user to be able to do from this point? We could click the search button again, I suppose, if I don't know, there was a network error or something messed up. I don't know, but it's a thing that we're allowing, that we're modeling here. That you could click the search button again, and it just brings you back to the same state. It's just a loop. But you could also enter some more text, and if you did that, and your quote unquote entering of text ended up actually removing all the text, like you just deleted it, then that would take you to the empty text field state. And then, here you can see if entering text here, all right, so this is the only place you could go. At this point, you could, enter, you could do things that result in no text being entered, I guess, somehow. How would that work? If you have an empty text field, pretty much anything you could do. Oh, this is why I should not have clicked the barcode scanner, because there's not. I think it's broken right now, in which you cannot get back. There's no UI element to get back to the text search. But if it's empty, then anything you enter, it's going to not be empty. And so then we can go back to populated text field. We can enter some more. We can quote unquote enter text that actually removes text, and then that brings us back to empty. And so this kind of models all the different kinds of activities within this component. And so you could do this without xstate, right? So you could have these actions as actions in Redux, and manipulate the state based on what was happening there. And maybe long-term, that'll be a thing to do. But on the other hand, if you do it that way, if you do it all in Redux, then you don't have this handy interactive state machine to be able to understand what's happening. And so that's a pro. A not trivial pro of using xstate or something like it for modeling these sorts of interactions. And so yeah, and then of course the xstate, the state machine itself is just this object that has all this information, and then we have some guards. So like when in the diagram it says has text or will have text. So this is the code that implements those guards to check. We're storing actually, and here's actions, save text to context. So if the event type was enter text, we can grab the text from the event. Otherwise, we're grabbing the existing text from the context. We're doing these things. So a con of this is that this adds another technology that you have to understand, to be able to make sense of what's going on in the app. For me, working on this, it's not a con, it's a pro, because it gave me an excuse to try out xstate and see what it was all about. And that's kind of part of the rationale for spending all this time on this application, rather than spending, I don't know, $5 or whatever it is on my MyFitnessPal for the barcode scanner functionality, is, being able to work on an app and now being able to live stream it and share this project. Okay, so we're a little over halfway through today's stream. I think it's about time to take a break. When I come back, I think the thing to do next will be actually to look at some documentation, either in xstate or in Redux/Redux Toolkit, to figure out what's going to make sense in terms of converting. Let's see, where do we need to leave off? Hold on one sec. So we have all this stuff, right? So in the, I think the next step is to look at the food search component. Yeah. And start to reduxify this and figure out how are we going to interface. Is it, one, how would that work if we want to integrate xstate and Redux? And is it going to be more trouble than it's worth? Is kind of an open question, because I don't know. I feel like I did some searching before as I was thinking about using Redux. In fact, pause that for a second. Let me go back to the backlog here where I have this all these notes from before. Did I think about xstate at all? No. Okay. Good. So worth just checking to see if I've already thought about this, but it looks like I didn't. So when I come back, the next thing we'll do will be to start thinking about converting this component to use Redux and figuring out how to integrate it, how to replace this integration. Actually, let me do one last thing here. So in our old state management solution, how are we even integrating with xstate? Is a thing worth looking at. So this is we have food search input. Is kind of this observable is how we are kind of interacting with that. So worth keeping that up, and we can also search for that in here. So in event, in events.ts, we can see where we are. Okay, so we have a food search inputs agent factory. What is this, Java? Where we are, we have a handle food search state helper function that's responsible for instantiating this factory and turning it into an observable, and then starting the state machine, and then subscribing to its events, right? So we can, or rather, we are listening to events on our main event observable, our observable of actions, which is kind of the action mechanism that the old RxJS-based store/state management solution that I had built before, how that was working. So this is how we're looking for these food search input actions, and we are doing things like debouncing, and we are feeding that information. We're subscribing to the stream of events and then sending that to our state machine. And then how are we getting information from the state machine? Right, so then we have this observable, food search input, which is actually our observable of the things coming from the state machine. And that's what we're returning here. So these incoming and outgoing observables are how the existing solution is interfacing with xstate. But the question is going to be, what is it going to look like with interfacing with xstate from Redux and Redux Toolkit, and how much like overhead is that going to introduce. So that is more than enough of a kind of plan for what to do after the break. So BRB in a few. All right. Okay. Back to it. This does not look to be what I'm looking for. Ooh, create xstate slice. Interesting. Huh. You send parent to send events to Redux. Redux stores your machine's parent. You can call send parent and send actions to Redux. Huh. There is... no mention of it being on npm.js. It says proof of concept. I didn't. Yeah, no. I don't want to actually create a fork. Thanks. Oh yeah, there you go. 7 forks. Okay. And what is this code sandbox? Let's look at the xstate docs. I really don't want to have to like re-implement the state machine logic. Okay, that just... Okay, the only exact match is this right here. React patterns. Yeah. Okay. Let's think about this. So in the food search component, there's some information that we need. Some state that we are accessing that we're going to need to model. It's the search text, UPC text, view, barcode scanner error, is loading apparently from food search results. Yes. Right. Because the parent component is responsible for actually displaying this result, but we want to have the loading information to be able to show here. It feels like we need like a food search slice in Redux to have that information. Yeah. And then I think we can... So one thing I could attempt to do would be to have some kind of smart thing that would allow me to expose the actions that are available from our state machine, from xstate, as actions and do all that. I think that would be too much of an investment right now. I think what I want to do is I want to actually just like proceed with building the interface of this slice as if I was just going to purely use Redux, and then those actions can then, I suppose for right now, interface with our state machine. Like we can put the instance of the state machine in the store maybe, and then have the actions interface with it. Maybe. I don't know. Well, I think that is the path that will make sense to pursue. We'll see as we get further down that path whether that is going to actually be tractable. But that will then give us the things we need if we need to, say, just give up on xstate and implement the logic directly in Redux. So so I think we do need the slice, and so we're going to do a food search slice. And then I mean, I think this pretty handily defines what we need in terms of state and actions here. There are also the ones in the dialogue that we have yet to implement around, you know, is this quick search? So what is show all results supposed to do? Oh, that's supposed to transition. Yeah, okay. So, and then I think, so a lot of these also are going to need to be actions that are provided by the food search slice. Yeah. Okay. Let's borrow some of this. Should be enough stuff to get us started, and then we'll rename this to food search slice. Figure out what that state should look like in a minute, and then we'll leave out. We don't need any selectors for the moment, and I don't know. Okay, so what does this interface need to look like? So we can have let's take a look at what we're doing here with this. Okay, so we are essentially getting these elements, barcode error, barcode text, and search text, from 3 different pieces of context from our state machine. I wanted to check that this was not something where these are actually all the same thing. That it's kind of like there's a state that's switching, but indicating which one they are. But no, those are 3 separate things that are being maintained, which I think makes sense. Like if you're in the barcode scanner and you scan a barcode and you switch back to text mode, you don't want to search the text of the barcode. So we'll have a search text that will be string or null. Should it ever be null? These aren't. These are always strings. UPC text. Now, do we reproduce this view information, indicating kind of what view we want to show? I think maybe. We'll try it. That's an attempt, Copilot. Let's see. Then barcode scanner error. It's error or undefined. I guess we do want kind of a loading state. And we do want search results as well, right? Search results. Kind of redundant in a food search state to say state, so we just say results. And this is a food array, right? That's the type of food search results. Well, if we look at this, search food is observable of results. I guess it could be null as well. That's at least how we modeled that in search results for meal add food. I think it will make sense for that to mirror that. So this is quick search. How are we going to represent that in this? Right, so in our oh, I see. That's why Copilot kept on suggesting results view. So if it's a quick search result, okay, well, I think maybe just we can mirror this. So the food to add is the other element that I think we need for meal add food. And that also sort of fits in with this. Like it's, you know, we're searching, we found, here are all the results. This is the one candidate of the result that we want to then consider adding. Okay, and so then we can start populating these things. I guess that's fine. And search text. UPC text. View should start off as text search. Is quick search false? Results is null. Food to add is null. So that gets us our kind of initial state. Then we need actions, right? So these different actions that could be performed from our food search component include entering text, clicking the search button, clicking the barcode button, clicking the back button from the barcode scanner, finding a code, there being an error, and triggering a retry of the scanner. So the question, going back to what I was saying before about kind of this path of building this out, just using Redux, and then, as we get further in, seeing if we can leverage our state machine or what we need to do. I think to continue that path, what we'll do is we'll implement some reducers here like we're doing in the dialog slice. Does that make sense? So it's interesting because there are side effects. Like some of these things, if we were just implementing them just with Redux and xstate wasn't in it at all, like entering text, and showing an error, those sorts of things would just be reducers, right? We would be putting some information into the store, into the state, to show. But then things like, okay, well, when the user clicks the search button, some things are supposed to happen, right? So we're supposed to, hit the back end, do some things, whatever. Then we might have a thunk to model that action. Whereas if we look at what's going on in our state machine, how does that work? Like, how does clicking the button in the UI go through the state machine and result in like a tRPC call? And I think that has something to do with how we've integrated this with RxJS and all of that. I don't know if we actually see any of that. Like, so when you enter text, there are these actions internally in xstate in our food search input state machine that are updating the context, using assign text to do that. And here's some actions. So build food search input agent. So here's that thing we referred to as a factory in the other file, where we're interpreting the state machine with this config, and we're providing these actions. And these actions are actually from our RxJS action thingy. So these are actually putting events in our RxJS observable to make things happen, right? So that is how we're interfacing the state machine with the old store and how it's, making requests. So you could do something similar to this by giving this, what would you do? I guess you would give this dispatch and the relevant thunks, or this could import the thunks. that gets maybe a little circular though, because this file needs to be imported by our slice. Like if we were to just to drop or this xstate state machine into here, then we wouldn't actually want to have some of these things, because that state information would actually, well, I don't know. I guess a way of doing it would be to do like we're doing in RxJS and like subscribe to the state machine, and then we could dispatch out updates. I think for right now, I want to try to do this. Let's just put the xstate stuff to the side, and let's try to do this with just Redux, and see how far that gets us. Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be good. So we are going to want some reducers to be able to feed in like the search text or the UPC text in order to update the view. And then we'll also need some thunks for handling like doing the search or on barcode button click. What does that actually do? That sends a message effectively here on this event, then go to barcode search. Initial is scanning. Okay. So I think the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to replace all of these with placeholder values so that I can remove use observable and this old use store, and then I can add the use dispatch and all that stuff into here. So then we can just hard code this. So just, breaking things. And then, so results can be null. Great. Of course, this doesn't use feed search results, so don't even need that. We will go to one of our other examples and grab that to start with. And then we're also going to need to start implementing some selectors for our food search slice to get information. So we can start with search text. Export const select search text. Yeah. Okay. And we can use selector select search text. Okay. So that is how we'll move forward on that. And then we need a bunch of actions. And for just the moment, I'll just define all of these actions in Reducer. So we'll have enter text. Can I get away with that? Yeah. Search. Do I want to make this easy on myself by just mirroring the names from the old thing? I think no. What is click back button supposed to represent? Cancel barcode. Scan. Right, so part of what this does is this provides the wiring to interface like our barcode scanner component to give us information back about what's happened. Things that, if I was doing this from scratch today, maybe I could have put that in the barcode scanner component. Maybe not. I don't know. So what does found code? I mean, we're just saving the okay, we'll just call it found code. Yep. And retry. Scanning. Scanning. Copilot. Alright, and then we can just export all these. Okay, then we don't need these imports anymore. And we can import all of our actions. Nope, that's wrong. Nope, don't need that. Found code, retry scanning, scan barcode, scanner error, search. Can we call it search food? Nah, it's fine. Okay. So, whoops. Let's do this. Oops. Control Alt. Yeah, there we go. Dispatch thingy. This will be not quite right, but yeah, something like that. How does one dispatch an event? Okay, yeah, you call it. You call the action with the text in question, and then you dispatch that. Right, because this function builds the action, and then you dispatch it. All right, so now we're going to dispatch search. And scan barcode. And is it actually called that? Cancel barcode scan. Okay, I guess it is. And then found code. Yep. Which I didn't import. It's the one I missed. No, I did find it. What's the problem? Okay. Anyway, I was supposed to take a code anyway. There you go. This should probably be an error. That's not the... It's actually called that. And then retry. Okie. So now we've hooked up the component to all of the actions that are generated by these reducers. So if we go back to the diary, seems like this tab is having issues. New tab, please. We'll click add to breakfast, and it crashes. Value is undefined. Oh, right, because we have not actually added the slice to the store. Huh. I mean, I get... So on the one hand, so what I was just thinking about, you know, if because these are importing the default exports of these files, we could just call these things whatever. We could call them settings and dialogue and diary and food search. And then this would just be, you know, this. Right? But then that could become confusing if we, like here we're importing create. You know, if we had a create slice, that would be problematic. So I guess that keeps it a little bit separate. Like all of our slices end with slice in this. So that's okay. Can we... It seems that once we have crashed, we just have crashed. So don't want to search. There we go. Okay. Can we... Okay. Is this the same error that's not our problem? Yes. Great. So, of course, this doesn't do anything. It's not interactable at all. But, you know, progress is sometimes many steps back before we go forward again. So, we are not having any text because we need to save it, put it in the store. Okay, so that works. That was easy. If only they were all that easy. Some of these that I've created as reducers here are going to need to be converted over into thunks to actually do work. One of the things that I don't see any reason to implement, something that was in the xstate version, is there were essentially baked in to the state machine is the fact that if you're in a certain state, you can only do certain actions that get you to other states. And if you were to somehow perform an action that was not one of those actions, it would do nothing. If you did an action, that would in another state bring you to do something else, but that wasn't an action that was available from the state you were in, xstate wouldn't let you do anything. I'm not going to re-implement like all those guards and all of that here. The UI kind of does that anyway, right? Because if your UI presents certain options and then you like click the barcode scanner, then the search box isn't available anymore. Now, the benefit of having state machine to kind of dictate like what's allowed and not is that if things go wrong or what have you, that it's an extra check to prevent things from going completely off the rails. But and again, it's helpful to like model how the UI should work. But now that we have that model, it seems, at least at the moment, it's feeling like it's just more effort than it's worth to try to incorporate xstate into this. That proof of concept that was looking at before for having a slice that's made of an xstate state machine looked pretty interesting. In fact, I might just keep that open as a tab to look at again and think about in the future. But not right now. So let's see. What are we going to do here? So if we click the button that ends up putting us to, so scan barcode here. So what we want to do here, yeah, exactly. We want to switch to the scanning state. And then if we cancel, then we want to go back to the text search view, right? And then if we found a code, we want to do that. Sometimes Copilot is just crazy wrong, but sometimes if you give it enough hints, things like this, it can kind of it can be helpful. So what's it going to do with the scanner error? Okay, view should be showing error, and barcode scanner error should be the payload. It makes sense. Retry scanning. So we should go back to scanning view, and we should clear the error. I don't know if that will be enough. When we're looking at the view, showing code, showing error, scanning, that does reload it causes this component to be visible. Maybe that's enough. I think the other thing I should do right here is I should also add these other selectors. And we can add those here as well. Yeah, select view. Interesting. Interesting that it chose to say that this is the type of the result. I'm gonna scroll down so that the screencast little bar doesn't get in the way. Results, I guess, is a thing. Yep. I think we don't need this for this component, but we will want that, so might as well just provide all of these selectors. I mean, sure. I mean, this could just be string, but whatever. Is that all of the state results? Food to add is quick search, view, UPC text, search text, loading. I guess we didn't select loading. There it is. Bam. And then add all missing imports. Did I do the right thing? Looks like it. It looks like it imported it all from food search. It's kind of, yeah, it's loading. Okay. For a second, I was thinking that maybe there was another one. Maybe the name is slightly different or something. I feel like there was another selector from another slice that was similar. Okay, so now we have all of this data selected from the store, and we've wired in all of these dispatches, and some of them actually even do things. This needs to be a thunk. No. Yeah. Is that the only one? I guess so, because like the barcode scanner itself has its own, like its own internal state, what it's doing and stuff, and how it interacts with this component. So I think maybe the search button is the only thing. Now, one thing that we do need to figure out, that the xstate version did, is that there was a quick search functionality. So the kind of search that we're doing, so either there's this, I click the button and it triggers a search, but there's also, I entered some text, and then if I am idle for half a second, then do a quick search, and that changes the state. So how do we do that is a question. Maybe there's something in the documentation for Redux that will give us a hint. Maybe an API reference. API slice utilities. Prefetch. Get running queries. Set up listeners. Interesting. Matching utilities. interesting, but not what I'm looking for. Create async thunk. I mean, maybe this means that the intertext action also needs to be a thunk, so that we can have something to keep track of. How would that work? Basically something to keep track of how long it's been since. Okay, users entered some text. How long has it been since they entered some more text? I don't know. Let's see if there's anything in the docs that would give a hint as to how that might work. If not, there's always Stack Overflow, Google, etc. What about Redux thunk timer? Yep. Very true. So we have some selectors, action types, thunks. Recur update. Dispatch, set timeout. I guess what we want is essentially a piece of state that indicates we are keeping track of how long it's been. And then if we are, how long it has actually been. And then if it has been long enough and we are still active, then then we fire off the quick search. And once we've done that, then we clear off that piece of state that indicates that we are that we were pending, waiting for long enough for that quick search to happen. So this should be a thunk. No, Copilot, that's a pattern, just not the pattern I'm after. So that we can set a timer. Did we do debounce in end. Also, so that can trigger quick search. Doesn't type anything for. Okay. And then as a hint for future me, quick search, I'll capitalize it there. So delay, number, or null. And then we will start that with it being null. Or whatever. Set a timer and then decrement. Decrement, not the timer. Quick search delay on every pulse. Something like that. So then maybe we end up with like two thunks. One is like the quick search and one is the normal search. And then intertext would eventually dispatch the quick search one. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be about it for today. Making progress, as always. We can get back to this modal, other than we broke it. Quick add still works, right? Yeah. Setting still works? Yeah. Cool. All right, and then this is still there, you know, so mostly working. Yeah, let's take a look at a good number of changes. Like we updated the story because stuff was broken from last time. We wired in the dispatch here. Let me hold on. Close others. Close all. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that it only worked on the group. So you have multiple groups, so it would close all, but only in that group. Anyway. And then food search. Here we've reduxified it quite a bit. Pretty much a one-for-one swap here, switching from using use observable from our custom stuff. What I'm really looking forward to is once we get through all this is going back to like where these things are defined and like ripping all that code out is always very satisfying, right? Logged food actions, remove the to-do from last time since we did implement those thunks. Address this other to-do as well. Oh, these imports aren't used anymore. Bye-bye. Wiring in some Redux stuff into the meal add food dialog. And still working towards being able to see this. We need to continue working on the food search capability in order to be able to get to the part where we can see the results. We added our food search slice, added the details we needed around meal add food for our dialog slice. Added the remaining logic the first thing we did today, add the remaining logic around deleting or moving food items on meals to actually update them without needing to do a refresh, another round trip to the server. And this is our new food search slice that we'll pick up next time around. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to stage everything except for the food search slice. And I think I'm not going to commit this because it's kind of still pretty broken. I guess I could commit the diary meal stuff. Let's see, what could I do here? Meal add food. What are we calling dispatch? Oh, we aren't yet. To do, add dispatch. Okay. Dispatches, sure. So we can add that just because it is, I mean, this is all on a separate branch for this work. But we can save all of the things that we have accomplished, but not really anything referring to the food search stuff. I'm gonna leave that for once we get a little bit further along. That though is good. Save that. Save that. And diary meal. Okay, so from what was last week? 23rd. And then that leaves us with these uncommitted changes. That'll be a good reference for next stream, which will be same time next week. And with that, we're done for now. Thanks for watching. Until next time.